Hello, and it's time for the Raw review here on Wrestling with Regret. Well, it's the final Raw before Summerslam, and a lot of build goes toward the show this week, including an announcement for a venue change. More on that later. But first, we'll begin with the opening segment. Well, first of all, the opening with the graphic, the logo, and everything has technical difficulties, which is a harbinger of things to come. The champion, Drew McIntyre, makes his way to the ring for an opening promo. I did notice a little bit of a change in his intro here, because instead of like the bagpipes is playing before the drums kick in, now it's the sound of like a sword, like shing, kind of sound effect, and then the drums kick in with the bagpipes and everything. Small change, but I think that's a good improvement. What Randy Orton did to Ric Flair last week, said Drew, was unforgivable. And Drew also says that at SummerSlam, Orton's not going to face a 71-year-old man. He's going to face a very pissed off Drew McIntyre. As he's talking, though, we start seeing these quick camera cuts to like other camera angles and like other graphics in the VTR. It just looks all sloppy and terrible. It can only mean one thing: retribution. They have hijacked the production truck and they're just going willy-nilly on the buttons, it seems. Yeah, I feel that like when they do that, like I've said this for weeks now, when the retribution, when the sign of them is like, oh, there's some production botches, oh, the mic cuts out, oh, the lights flicker, and in a case like this, it's literally just unwatchable television. And I know that that's them supposed to be being, disrupting the system and everything like that, but when you see a show like that and it's just like all these different like glitches and everything and looks like human error at first and then it's like sabotage, it just does not, it's not fun to watch. It doesn't make me go, oh, I wonder what's going to happen here. No, it just makes me turned off from the product. It makes me want to tune out and not watch it anymore. And it's like, I hate the fact that that's like their sign, that's their calling card, is production. As a production person who like came up and worked in TV production before going full-time with YouTube, it hurts my soul to see something which is normally pretty polished for WWE to be completely just like sacrificed in the wake of this storyline, which we don't even know what the payoff is yet. After the break, we see Drew giving a pep talk to the locker room and saying we need to band together to fight retribution. In cackles Seth Rollins and Murphy, and Seth says, he's the real leader of the locker room and that being a champion, Drew, does not make you a leader. In the background, Cedric Alexander and Ricochet pipe up and they tell Seth, hey, rumors say that Rey Mysterio is going to be on the show tonight. Seth is not afraid. He turns his attention back to Drew, who then wants to fight Seth and Murphy, but they take their leave, and that is the end of that segment. The Hurt Business make their way for a promo. You can tell there's still some disarray in terms of production at this point after Retribution run in, because for the longest time, this promo is just a single, very long, static hard cam shot, like it's a wide shot on the ring and the set and everything, and like MVP's miles away, it feels like, as he's cutting this promo. Finally, we see, like after a minute of this, we finally see like a roaming cam come in there, and then like someone's on the tripod of the hard cam and everything. Things slowly get back to normal as MVP basically accuses Apollo Crews of starting Retribution to fight him, MVP. Apollo comes out and basically denies any involvement with the group. MVP says that Apollo fears losing the US Championship, which is why he's resorting to these dirty tactics, and Apollo agrees, yes, I am fearful of losing the championship, which is why I'm fighting so hard for this. Apollo then makes a challenge to MVP, saying that if he can beat Shelton Benjamin on this night, then Shelton and Lashley are barred from ringside of the US title match at SummerSlam to prove that MVP cannot beat him without help. We go to that match now, and it's a rematch from last week. Shelton rolled up Crews to win in kind of sneaky fashion after the Hurt Business got involved. And not much to say about this match either. Early on, R-Truth and Akira Tozawa run their way through the match and like just interrupt things. And in the distraction that allows Apollo to capitalize, rolls up Shelton to win. I mean, he practically beats Shelton in just as cheap a way as Shelton did last week. Not sure how that helps him. After the match, though, we've got beatdown from the Hurt Business. In come Mustafa Ali and Cedric and Ricochet to help save the day. Takes 3 dudes to take out Lashley and get him out of the ring. And then in the confusion, out comes R-Truth yet again. Shelton Benjamin just hits him and rolls him up to win back the 24/7 championship. That felt necessary. And then after that part, MVP challenges Apollo and his friends. Pick 2 of your friends against the 3 of us in a 6-man elimination tag. There was a lot going on in this segment. Backstage, Angel Garza hits on Demi Burnett of The Bachelor once again. Like, what deal is she on that she keeps like showing up for weeks at a time? Is she on like a contract? Is this an actual like, was she just in town and she's kind of like helping? Does she have friends there? I don't understand what her relationship relationship is with WWE at this point. But anyway, Ivar comes in, and so Angel offers Demi a rose, and then Ivar offers her a turkey leg, and then there's more accusations about Montez Ford being poisoned. Angel denies anything, shoves a turkey leg out of Demi's hand, and Ivar just immediately produces another one and kisses it to Demi. Oh, what is a girl to do? Then we get the official announcement from the show that the Thunderdome is debuting Friday night on SmackDown. It is WWE's residency at the Amway Center where the Orlando Magic play, and basically it seems like they're going to do a whole state-of-the-art set with all these different screens, and they said there's going to be drone cameras and pyro and lasers, big selling point on the lasers, and there's going to be a virtual fan experience where all these different fans are going to be allowed to kind of watch the show. That could set up some really unfortunate things. I can't wait for some fan to just pull his dick out in the middle of the broadcast, or for someone to hold up a sign saying Chris Benoit or something. A lot of room for some sabotage there, but hopefully they're on top of that. Also, like, what's the delay going to be like? When the fans are watching the show, is there going to be like a 2-second delay for the pops? Like, how's that going to work? So it's kind of exciting news. It's a change of scenery from these empty and near empty Performance Center and Full Sail shows we've been seeing since the pandemic first arrived. But, you know, is this a solution to their creative problems in the company? No, absolutely not. This is window dressing. It's a band-aid. It's basically a big publicity thing to get fans to tune in and say, oh, I wonder how this is going to look. You know, I'm optimistic it's going to look great as well. But, you know, this is not going to pop a rating, at least not in a long-term thing, if even in the short term. Again, I'm very excited to see what they'll do here. I'm sure with the access they have and the resources they have for all the possibilities they could do with tech and production and make it look really clean and fun and different, sure, I'm all for it. But I mean, like, yeah, I mean, hopefully this will at least look like a fun show to watch. Still, creatively, there's problems. We go to the next match, Ivar taking on Angel Garza in singles action. As the match goes on, we cut to backstage and we see Angelo Dawkins of the Street Profits hitting on Demi Burnett. Ivar throws his opponent around for a bit, but as he gets back into the ring, Andrade on the outside causes a bit of a distraction, allows Angel to capitalize and win. It is what it is. Then after the match on the big screen, we see Dawkins and Burnett, and Angelo says there's some video dropping very soon that's got some very saucy secrets being put out on display here, and it makes Zelina and crew very nervous, and Zelina even confronts Samoa Joe about what's going on. Samoa Joe apparently is the man with all the answers. Sean Ross Sapp actually made a good point on Twitter tonight. Samoa Joe became just Joe. He was the guy with all the rumors and the scoops and the inside intel and everything. And so Zelina's very nervous. After commercial break, we see in the back they play this security cam footage, and it's a shot from a couple weeks ago with Zelina very blatantly doing something to Montez's drink before his match, which then implicates her in the poisoning from a couple of weeks ago, and she's still denying everything. She blames Charlie Caruso, who walks in and tries to get some answers and everything. Out comes Montez Ford. He runs in. They all want the smoke. They chase off the challengers, so Montez is back. He is not poisoned anymore. So that was a bit of a walk to get to the conclusion that many people already had figured was in the bag. I mean, like I said last week, if it's not Zelina who's responsible for the poisoning, who is it at this point? But sure enough, you know, we found out tonight what many people already assumed, what they even alleged happened like the moment we found out there was poisoning going on, that Zelina was responsible. So what did the delay in this release teach us anything about anyone? Not really, except the fact that, oh, Zelina's evil, but we already knew that. Mickie James back in the ring for the first time in months, taking on Natalya. And like, man, Mickie James is back here after this big injury that kept her on the shelf for months. She doesn't even get an entrance? That's pretty weak. As the match goes on, Lana is using her phone at ringside to get some footage of Mickie getting beaten up. She's doing it for the gram. And there's a bit double down in the ring. After that happens, Seth Rollins and Murphy come out and they start yelling, or Seth, I should say, starts yelling at Samoa Joe, like, what do you know about the Mysterio rumor and everything? That whole argument is happening. Meanwhile, Mickie James loses by count out, which is pretty whack, and then she just like kicks Lana in the head afterward. And that's that. Like, that's what you brought Mickie James back for? Like, what the hell was even the point of that match happening in the background? And then afterwards, Seth finally gets on the microphone. He wants to know Samoa Joe's sources and says that if Rey or Dominik Mysterio show up, that neither of them will make it to SummerSlam. You know, fine, storyline advancement for Seth Rollins and whatever, and Samoa Joe, what role does he play? But man, like, again, what was the point of Mickie versus Natalya? What was the point of bringing Mickie back if that's what you're going to do with her? Up next, Sasha Banks and Bayley take on Shayna Baszler and Asuka, kind of an unlikely duo there. The champs on the mic, and they call Asuka the Empress of Stupidity for wanting to wrestle twice in one night for those championships at SummerSlam. They playfully argue over who will beat Asuka first, and Bayley volunteers, saying they'll defend their tag belts 1 week later at Payback. Like, oh my God, why are those two shows so close together? Shayna Baszler comes out next and says, you know, whoever wins the Raw Women's Championship match at SummerSlam, she's got next in line. Asuka comes out, cuts a promo, half Japanese, half English. As the match goes on, the recently suspended Nia Jax literally punches her way through the plexiglass barricade, and the plexiglass lands on Shayna. That was a pretty funny visual. They fight their way out of the ringside area, so it's 2-on-1 for a while. Advantage the champions. But after Sasha's got Asuka in the bank statement, Shayna makes her way through. She runs from the entranceway and breaks up the hold, and then she gets tagged in. She's a house of fire. She gets the Kirifuda clutch onto Bayley, but Sasha breaks it up. Asuka takes Sasha to the outside, puts her in the Asuka lock. Well, that's going on. Shayna has Bayley back in the Kirifuda clutch. Bayley taps out. So good decisive win here by Asuka and Shayna. But man, with all these wins Asuka's racking up in the last couple of weeks leading up to this, there's no way that she's going to sweep the champions at SummerSlam, is there? We had a recap of the Seth Rollins Mysterio family feud, and then we go backstage where we see Apollo Crews making his decision which of his friends will face the Hurt Business in the 6-man later on. Apollo picks Ricochet and Mustafa Ali. Cedric's kind of offended by this, but he is selling a full Nelson attack from earlier in the night by Bobby Lashley, so, you know, Apollo's trying to look out for him. They all walk off screen, and then after a couple of beats, Randy Orton walks in. We hear a very loud, audible, possibly, you know, piped in gasp sound effect. I mean, it sounded like stock footage, stock audio footage, like, huh? Like this shock that Orton is there. But like, there's no payoff to that because Orton never does anything with Apollo on this night. So what was the point? Elsewhere backstage, we see Shawn Michaels talking with Drew McIntyre, and Drew's feeling kind of down on himself because he's allowed Randy Orton to run rampant on Raw while he's been champion, but Shawn talks him up and puts him over in a real big way. This would have been the segment where you have the two of them walk off screen, then Orton sneaks up behind them, and then you get the audible gasp sound effect, not the thing with Apollo Crews. Elsewhere backstage, the Iconics talk trash to Ruby Riott and Liv Morgan, you know, third or fourth verse, same as the first, and then when they're done talking before their match, Ruby and Liv walk off, and then the Iconics see, and the camera pans over to reveal Shayna Baszler talking with her friends from the Four Horsewomen, Marina Shafir, Jessamine Duke. Haven't seen those three together since Shayna lost the NXT Women's title to Rhea Ripley last year, so kind of cool to see them all back on TV. Also, damn, Shayna Baszler cleaned up and got dressed really quickly after her match. Next match sees Ruby Riott taking on Peyton Royce, who's filling in for Billie Kay at the last minute. She's selling some kind of like shoulder injury, and she's kind of like volunteers paid to take her place. And so the match goes on. The match ends in a very similar manner to what happened last week. Ruby is thrown into Liv from behind, so there's some incidental contact. Oh, the friendship is tested yet again. Peyton wins once again with deja vu. Very similar to what happened last week. So what will it take for the Riott Squad to finally break out of their funk, and what will it take for me to care? It's time for Raw Underground. The first thing we see here is Eric taking on a local man and beating him pretty resolutely. Shane McMahon is interviewing Dolph Ziggler at ringside, and Dolph kind of gives him this backhanded compliment, like, oh yeah, 4 out of 10 performance by Eric there. So Eric wants to challenge Dolph, and the match happens. It's probably the best Raw Underground fight we have seen since the beginning of it. There's a lot of good back and forth. It's actually drawn out fairly well. Ultimately, Dolph makes Eric tap after a poke to the eye, and then Ivar gets mad, checks Dolph out of the ring and into some fans. It's a pretty fun bump. And that's how the segment ends. We find out that next week, Ivar and Dolph will be fighting on Raw Underground. So they're finally getting some promotion to not just the segment itself, but matches within the segment, which I guess is good. But again, and this is something I'll probably bring up as we go through the show later, you know, there's still a lack of like, what is the purpose? What is the origin? What is the objective? The why of Raw Underground still has not been addressed. The rumors are true. Rey Mysterio is in the building. He and Dominik make their way out to the ring. Rey has still got the eye patch over the hole in his mask, and Dominik still selling the kendo stick injuries from the previous week. Rey talking about the pain that he felt, not just what happened in Extreme Rules where he almost lost his eye, but the pain that he felt seeing Dominik get whumped so bad by Seth and Murphy due to those kendo stick shots. Dominik, you know, first of all, Rey says he wants to be in Dominik's corner, but Dom says he can handle it and everything. Seth Rollins and Murphy show up on the big screen screen, and Seth calls Ray an idiot for coming back and letting Dominik wrestle him at SummerSlam. Seth says it all could have been avoided if Ray had just, listened from the beginning. It says the Mysterio family legacy will be sacrificed for the greater good. Ray calls out Seth and Murphy, and they make their way to the ring. The Mysterios powder out of the ring, but it's an elaborate ruse because Dominik produces a couple of kendo sticks from behind the timekeeper's area, and so Dominik and Ray just womp the hell out of Buddy and Seth in retaliation for last week. Another great segment with the Mysterios and the Messiah Maniacs. Good fighting back by Dominik and Ray after what happened last week. Dominik, I think, has been set up about as well as you possibly could going into SummerSlam. I think, with all these extenuating circumstances, who knows when they were actually planning on pulling the trigger with Dominik getting in the ring. Whether it was going to happen at SummerSlam anyway or not, I get the feeling that it was not the path that they originally intended. But, like I said, I think they've done a pretty good job building him up. He's still going to get killed at SummerSlam, though. Backstage, MVP approaches Cedric Alexander, and he knows he's frustrated that he was not picked to be in the six-man tag. MVP says maybe Apollo saw Cedric as the weakest link of the group. It reminds him that the opening or the offer to join the Hurt Business still stands, and Cedric looks kind of conflicted. My biggest takeaway from this segment, though, was I swear to God there was somebody looking in the background, sneaking around. I saw a head moving around near MVP's side of the shot. I know I'm not crazy. We go back to Raw Underground where we see Arturo Ruas and Riddick Moss fighting. They're beating the hell out of each other in this thing, and Shane McMahon is just loving it at ringside. We don't really get a winner, though, in this fight as the two of them roll out of the ring, and they each deck some spectator on the outside, and Shane just calls it off and says, yeah, great fight, guys. Okay, our next match is the six-man elimination tag as the Hurt Business take on Apollo Crews, Ricochet, and Mustafa Ali. Did you forget that Shelton Benjamin regained the 24/7 title on this night? I know I did. In a matter of moments, Lashley eliminates Mustafa Ali, and Shelton Benjamin eliminates Ricochet, so it's 3-on-1 real quick. Apollo Crews in a real bad way. Crews hits the toss powerbomb onto Shelton, beats him for the second time in the night, and then moments later, Cedric Alexander shows up, rolls up Shelton to win the 24/7 championship, which I thought was a pretty clever, sneaky move. Some real obvious commentary dubbing in this match in post-production to help further plug the Thunderdome happening later in the week. Crews is able to eliminate MVP with the toss powerbomb, but Lashley gets in there right away and snuffs him out. Hits the spear to win the match for his team. Can Crews catch a freaking break? I mean, that's all I want here is him to actually kind of get booked in a somewhat dominant fashion. I'm not sure how this helps him. Him beating Shelton earlier to make it go straight up one-on-one is fine, but then this follow-up six-man tag where he gets the last one to be beaten, I think that was unnecessary. The only thing I thought was interesting about the match itself was Cedric rolling up Shelton, but we're not done with this storyline yet, because right after the break, Cedric is now defending the 24/7 title against Akira Tozawa. Akira summons ninja power, it's very ineffective, and then Cedric disposes him with a lung blower, but then after that, Shelton Benjamin comes back in, hits the pay dirt to regain the 24/7 title. Enough. Can we stop with the back and forth wins? After all these trades, I don't even know who's on top anymore. I mean, the Hurt Business, maybe, but after all these wins back and forth, what do we gain here? Who's got the advantage? Who has the momentum? And what was the point of any of that? We get our final Raw Underground segment of the night. Marina Shafir makes some lady tap out fairly quickly. Then after the match, Nia Jax runs in and jumps Shafir and Duke. Shayna Baszler gets in the ring, confronts Nia. They're about to have a fight, but Nia powders out of the ring and runs off. So the conflict with these two is definitely not over yet. I wonder if the match will finally be settled in an actual ring or in the confines of Raw Underground. Montez Ford back from his poisoning a couple of weeks ago, and he's taking on Andrade in singles action. Looks to be kind of back into top form here. It's a quick match with a lot of action packed in. It ends when Zelina gets on the apron to distract, but that backfires. Bianca Belair catching Zelina off the apron, hitting a world's strongest slam on the floor, which could not have felt good. Andrade loses after Montez rolls him up to win. Like I said, Ford is back. He's not poisoned anymore. And now we can just resume with that tag title match on Sunday. In your final segment, Shawn Michaels gets in the ring to talk about Randy Orton and the heinous act he did last week, punting Ric Flair. He gets a little verklempt as HBK, talking about how Flair was on his deathbed a couple of years ago, how if it wasn't for Ric Flair, so many wrestlers of the present and the past, would not be here today, and how ungrateful grateful Orton has been. After learning so much from Flair over the years, for him to attack Flair the way he did, that's completely out of line. Shawn says that whether it be due to the Sweet Chin music or the Claymore, which right there kind of opens up the possibility that he'll be involved in the match now, he says Orton will go down at SummerSlam. He goes to leave, but Orton shows up from out of nowhere, hits the RKO and the punt in quick succession, just knocks the baseball cap right off of HBK's head. Drew McIntyre shows up. He chases Orton out of the ring. He goes to check on Shawn. Shawn's almost back up to his feet by this point, and not a whole lot of time. Way to sell this ultra protected finisher in the RKO and the punch, Shawn. Like you've gotten up more and recovered faster than literally anyone else who's taken that so far in the last couple of months. But anyway, Orton comes back in. He and Drew start fighting, and Drew's just throwing Orton all over the place on the outside. Really has his number here. Drew goes back into the ring, but Orton's not done. Hits an RKO on Drew, and then he's standing tall at the end as Shawn's back down now. So Shawn and Drew are left laying as Orton stands tall at the end. It's probably the most vulnerable Drew has looked in the entire build for this matchup here, like all the way back from like the first week when Orton first hit him with the RKO. And that's what I've always liked about Drew's booking right now, is how little he looks weak and vulnerable. He always seems to come out on top in the end for the most part here. I think that I enjoyed how they kept the physicality between these two super minimal in the build to this. Like it was the very beginning and it was the very end before SummerSlam. I think it's been mostly Orton getting his heat on the legends, as it should be. I think it's been working. I think Shawn, like I said, kind of undersold the beating a little bit compared to everybody else, but besides that, I thought it was a fine way to close out the show. My grade for the go-home Raw before SummerSlam is a C, right down the middle for me. There are some things I liked about the show. I think that the women's tag was probably the best match of the night. I thought, I liked the storytelling with Mysterios and Seth Rollins. I liked the stuff with HBK and Orton and Drew. I even liked Raw Underground for the most part this week, even though I still think the why as to Raw Underground still unknown at this point. The Retribution glitches, I thought that it was all kind of cringeworthy to see that kind of thing. I know that's kind of the intention, but again, as a production person, it hurt my soul. I think that why would you bring back Mickie James after all this time just for kind of like a nothing return last week or nothing announcement last week, and then this nothing match with Natalya where she loses in the weakest way possible. Oh, she kicks Lana in the head afterwards, so she gets her heat back. That was really worth it. And just too much win swapping. Not just that, but also just like all the stuff going on with like the Hurt Business and Apollo and Friends. So many matches transpired with those like 6 or 7 guys in the span of these 3 hours, and at the end, I really couldn't tell you who comes out on top, like who's really like the real winner in this. It was just silly to me. But let me know what you thought about Raw this week in the comment section below. Just a heads up, because next weekend is going to be so chaotic for me between Saturday Dynamite and TakeOver and SummerSlam, I've decided that I'm going to take a break from doing weekly reviews next week. Just 1 week off. So there won't be a Raw review or a Wednesday Warfare. Lord knows there's enough preempting going on with the Wednesday with AEW right now. Hard to pin that down anyway. Also, no SmackDown review. I'm just taking the week off just to rest my mind and my body, and then I'll come back in full force, jumping Jeff Farmer style, the following week. So no Raw review next week, but the week after, it will come back. And I hope you can understand and respect my request for a week off from Raw just for 1 week. It's all I ask for. But let me know what you thought about the show in the comments section. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.